Tracy Rent, Dave and I went through every one of the schools, went through Stowe High Middle School, Stowe Elementary School, the People's Academy. This morning, Tracy and I went back up through the Morrisville Elementary School to take a very close look at air quality. And there are really just two things that count here. First of all, is humidity. So at a very high humidity, you have the airborne droplets, those big gooey droplets we talked about. And at lower humidities, you have airborne virus where it's stripped and it's sitting out there. So there is an ideal humidity, which is between 40 and 60%. And Dave has always emphasized you have an overall picture. You're looking at three things. You're looking at temperature because you don't want to be too uncomfortable. You're looking at humidity because you don't want droplets or viral particles. And then you're looking at CO2. So a lot of questions about CO2. CO2 itself is not a toxin. There's anything dangerous about CO2 in a classroom. However, it is the best overall marker, as we're going to see, of whether you have good air exchange or not. If there's one summary point of this entire talk, it is if you have good air exchange, you have safe air. So the numbers we're going to look at, just to give you a sense of scale, would be as follows. 800 is the marker between poor air and good air. 750, quite good air. At 600, they have been able to stop outbreaks of tuberculosis, MERS, and SARS. So when you get extremely good air, it can be extremely safe is the best way to put it. So let's take a little closer look at CO2. Since carbon dioxide is exhaled and carried by the ventilation response, at Cambridge University, they proposed that concentrations of CO2 can be used to indicate the potential presence of SARS-CoV-2 in the air, and that higher levels should trigger remedial action. So Dave and I went through all of the Stowe Elementary School a couple of times. You were there. We had this CO2 meter, which you see on the right-hand side. And with this, it's a mechanical CO2 meter. We were able to determine the CO2 levels in each one of these classrooms. It works in a minute because it's a mechanical sensor. The presence of stratification emphasizes the need to measure CO2 at the height where individuals are breathing. And that's why when we came into your classrooms, we try to have them right about student level and away from sources of fresh air where concentrations are typically much lower than room average. So let's just look at this. High CO2 signals the potential presence of COVID. Obviously, it doesn't cause COVID. It's just that if there's COVID in the room, this is linked to the probability of infection. When they had a super spreader event out in Washington State with a choir, and they went back to measure the CO2, I believe it came up to 2,200. So an exceptionally high level, which may have explained that super spreader event. A low CO2 is the best indicator of moving air. So when we were in your classrooms and we saw a low CO2, we said, there's good ventilation here. In several of them, all of them now, we've gone back in, we've opened windows and top and bottom and doors. And again, we can get a low CO2 reading, which is the best indicator of moving air. And just a quick and very simple point, in talking to Bill Irwin, who again is the PhD who is in charge of indoor air, the Department of Health, indicates that you just want to lower the CO2. It's a little bit of rock and roll. It's not like there's a fixed thing you have to do. It's like the best source of air is outdoor air, but you have HVAC systems, you have the HEPA systems, lots of different systems, but you want to get air moving. You measure it ceiling and floor. You want to remediate high levels if they're high. And 750 serves as kind of a warning point. And again, this came up during the school board meeting, just to reiterate, the CO2 isn't toxic itself. It simply serves as a marker. So here's the team, and no harder working team I've ever seen. Here's Dave. I was with him last week. On the left-hand side there, you can see this new device that I've bought, which measures flow. So we're measuring flow of air through the ventilators and windows. Mike has been a tremendous help and a wonderful colleague as well. You see on the right-hand side here that I've got one of these meters. And here are the tools. On the right-hand side, you see a CO2 meter. Again, it's a mechanical meter. It actually uses near-infrared spectroscopy to measure the molecules of CO2. And on the left-hand side, an airflow meter. So we can take every ventilation system. For instance, this morning in Morrisville, we found a room with a little higher levels, still not unsafe, but it didn't seem like the ventilation system was working. We measured it, and sure enough, it wasn't. And we're also getting a particle meter to make certain that the HEPA filters are taking all the particles out. Now, one key as a TV guy, signposted fact is that below 600, they've been able to stop outbreaks. In Taiwan, with 9 air exchanges an hour, they stopped the transmission of SARS, MERS, H1N1. And so increased circulation is responsible for 97% of the decreased transmission. And 6 air exchanges an hour is considered good. So where I want you all to feel good about yourselves is, listen, you're doing the masking well, you're doing the distancing, you have great questionnaires. Parents are I think, doing a good job. Teachers and staff even a better job in terms of socially distancing and staying away from parties and whatnot. This is a tremendous added benefit to have good, clean indoor air. So I'll go through these quickly, but I just wanted you to have a sense of metrics here. So CO2 levels, outside air Saturday morning here in Moscow, 444. If you look then in the locker room, a lot of people worry about gyms being dangerous. This is the swimming hole, 467, as good as outdoor air. Ski shop up at Traps, 472. On the upper right-hand side, you can see the new ventilation system that they got through a grant from the state of Vermont. So I believe the same kind we'll be having in the wing at Stoll Elementary. We've had higher levels. This is my airplane at 476. CVS, want to go shopping, go to CVS, 44. It's like outdoor air. It's fantastic. And again, remember, we're going up towards 800, which is the upper limit. Here's an ATM. Here's the Harvard Club in Boston, 517. In fact, so I'm doing a talk for the Harvard Club at 6 p.m. tonight on exactly the same issue. Here's Salute, a great restaurant we all know here in Stowe. If you go to take out an order, you're safe. 518, literally almost outdoor air. And I'm a big believer that in the spring, rather than shutting down, we should have looked at how do we make restaurants, bars, industry, school safer. And you do that through monitoring the air and the right kind of ventilation systems. On the left-hand side, you can see these giant ventilators at Salute. I'm holding up the ventilation device, which shows 889 cubic feet per minute. And to give you a sense of that, you want 15 cubic feet per minute per person. And so in theory, if you do the math on that quickly, that's going to give you what, 35 or so people could be safely with that one system, and they have lots of systems in there. Here's a piano store, 521, outdoor in Boston, 523, hotel lobby. I go to this hotel in a heartbeat, and safe, 535. Here's the Trap Family Lodge lobby. I don't think Stan would mind my showing this slide because it's 545. It's like outdoor air. Here's their dining room, again, 550. I think that a new motto as restaurants start to open is you're actually safer eating at one of these restaurants than having people come over your house. Why? Your house is probably 2,000 and it's just 550. Here's a bar in Stowe, 551. Here's a classroom at Stowe Elementary at 591. Fantastic air. Here's a gift shop at 597. This is the aerobics part of the swimming hole. And I work out there with confidence with a mask on because it's good air quality. Mercantile, still pretty good. Another restaurant in Stowe, moving up. A bar in Stowe, still pretty good. A chocolate shop, lunch. Here's my home office where I am right now where I am with just myself and Alistair. It's pretty unsafe here. It's 729. So if I were doing homeschooling or distance learning with Alistair and we had someone come in this room, it would be a greater danger than if you were at school. Supermarket a little bit higher, weight room a little higher, convenience store still higher. Now here are poorly ventilated spaces. This is the highest risk. The World Health Organization and the US Center for Disease Control and Prevention says that poor ventilation increases the risk of transmitting coronavirus. Here's a classroom. This is one of the higher classrooms that we noted here, but again, with the windows, that comes down. And just to be clear, this is easily ameliorated. You can see this classroom at 1721 in the upper wing there, Nina. And you see it with all the windows open, and literally 20 minutes later, we were down to 509. We have new ventilators coming in here this month. They're in place. We have the workers form. think it's going to be like the ones you just saw for TRAP. And we're going to have superb air quality in those classrooms. Now, the irony is, I got a pilot physical the other day. Here's the waiting room at 1818. Here's the nurse's office at 1903. Here's the doctor's office at 1947. So I said, Doctor, this is incredibly unsafe. You could get COVID here. He looks at me sheepishly and he goes, I've already had COVID. So I believe, one of the biggest problems now in America is you have hundreds of thousands of Americans every day unwittingly walking into spaces that have these incredibly high levels that are easily and quickly infecting them. This is what our tests look like when Dave and I walked through the school probably a month ago or so now. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so classrooms, 7 classrooms that are above normal. But again, if you look at Mr. Sembler's classroom here, it was 1723, 20 minutes later it was 592. Easy to fix. You can see lots of spaces here like the cafeteria, the long hall, kitchen, storage, the gym, with spectacular values. The gym, by the way, being just a wonderful place to be able to displace, if Nina thinks you need extra space any place. And for reference here, outside air was 447. So, I'd say the school gets excellent marks, and we have been out and around, Dave, much and Mike more than I have, but have been out and around making these rooms safe, safe, safe. Just to do a little statistical analysis of this, we also looked at air exchanges per hour and cubic feet per hour. And to be clear, there's input and output. That is, the input into the classroom is air exchanges per hour, and you like 3 to 6, or cubic feet per hour. How many cubic feet are we putting in there? And when I did a little further analysis here, looking at all these classrooms, there was a pretty good correlation between the best classrooms with air exchanges that were high, 6.29 per hour, and those that were low. This is North there at 1.36 per hour. But again, easily changed by opening the windows. When Dave and I took the flow meter and put it into an open window, it showed as much ventilation coming into that classroom as if we had put in another ventilator. And to be clear in terms of metrics here, at 9 air exchanges an hour in a hospital, you totally prevent tuberculosis. Airliners and trains, one of the reasons they've proven so safe is you get 20 air exchanges an hour. Dave has these wonderful units here now that you can put into your individual classrooms. And I was going to offer too, I'll show you at the end here, but I have these very fast CO2 systems. And if you have a problem classroom, or not problem, but you want to get your levels down and you want to, work with Dave or Mike, myself or Nina, we're happy to loan you one of these fast response for a day. And you can, plays the wrong word, titrate's the correct word. You can basically try things. We found opening the doors didn't work. Fans didn't work. Opening the upper window did, and you're going to see why here in a minute.